Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Ukraine and what's going on there has been, a topic, obviously, for the last 2 years, but also what different people are doing to help Ukraine and help Ukraine rebuild, recover, etc. And so I ran into a very interesting gentleman online. Dr. Roman Sheremeta is his name. He is PhD, chair of the Ukrainian American House. He's the founding rector of the American University in Kyiv. He's also a professor of economics at the Weatherhood School of Management at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. He holds a PhD in economics from Purdue University and is a recipient of many research and teaching awards, including the 2018 Smith Ascending Scholar Prize for Budding Genius. Get that, Budding Genius in social science, as well as multiple grants, including the National Science Foundation and the Max Planck Institute grants. Sheremeta was listed as a top economic thinker of Ukrainian descent by Forbes in 2015, a top-rated young economist in the world, according to the IDIS ranking in 2018, and recognized as the best 40 under 40 professors by Poets and Quants in 2019. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Sheremeta has been actively involved in delivering humanitarian aid to Ukraine and working on various initiatives to rebuild Ukraine, including the National Council Recovery and Advisory Board to the President of Ukraine. Welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour show, Dr. Roman Sheremeta.
Thank you, Brian, for having me.
My pleasure. So, bottom line, why would one want to open up a university in Kyiv right now, if ever?
Well, it was not planned to be to open up a university during the time of war, but in 2021, I was approached by the team of enthusiast investors and just believers in Ukraine who wanted to open a university, American university, English-speaking university that is connected to the United States and to Ukraine, open it in Kyiv in Ukraine. And so it's always been my dream to do something like that for Ukraine, because I was born in Ukraine, but I built my career in the United States. I wanted to come back and give back to the country that sort of gave me life. And so I was excited, and I joined, and the idea was to create a new educational institution that will aspire or inspire other universities to follow and to be the catalyst of transformation of the higher education system of Ukraine. Because if Ukraine has unfortunately but was under the rule of the Soviet Union for some time, and that left a quite significant mark on the educational system as well. And so the idea was to transform that by showing an example how this could be done. And so I was super excited. I joined the team, and in February 6th, I believe, we had our opening event. And the 3 weeks later, Russia invaded Ukraine. And so now we had a choice. Are we continuing with our effort, or do we stop? And we realized that, well, it's even more important than ever to do that, because it served as a beacon of hope, as sort of the that America didn't forget about Ukraine, the West did not forget about Ukraine. In fact, during the war, some of the hardest season of Ukrainian lives, we still gonna move forward, open a university. We will train the leaders of the future that will help Ukraine win the war, and then eventually rebuild the war, rebuild after the war. So that was the idea. We stuck with it, and during the past 2 years, I've been spending a lot of time, and most of my time, in Ukraine, and some of my time also in the US. And we were building a university. Now we have 350 students, and the idea is, the vision is to be the catalyst of transformation, to train the leaders of the future Ukraine, and obviously to also respond to the societal changes that Ukraine is facing. And so we have been doing a lot of great things. One of them is we collaborating with the Attorney General of the United States in helping Ukraine prosecute or collect evidence for the prosecution of the Russian war crimes, which is not typically something the university would do, but we are doing that because we want to respond to those challenges that Ukrainian people are facing today. And so this is why we do it. We do it because that's the right time to do it. This is the right, we want to be on the right side of the history, and this is why we do it.
Fantastic. How many students? What degrees are you offering? And are the professors from Ukraine or America or what?
So we are offering 9 degrees. So there's 9 programs right now that are in the working, and we are expanding as well. The two schools, the School of Management and School of Digital Technologies, which is basically IT or computer science school. We have faculty from all over the world. We have faculty from United States, from Netherlands, from Great Britain, from Poland, from Turkey, and obviously from Ukraine. We have a lot of teachers that either got their Fulbright or they got their PhD from New York or some other universities in the US, and then they've either moved back to Ukraine or around the world, but want to contribute to rebuilding of Ukraine. And so we have a spectrum of faculty. All of them are fluent in English. They taught in English most of their life. So it's a very high quality delivery system and programs. And we have right now, as of now, 350 students.
And these professors, these international professors, they're actually willing to travel to Kyiv to give courses?
Yeah, so there's a mix. So there is a faculty that travels to Kyiv. There is faculty that actually lives in Kyiv. So Jacob McGrew, which is he's an American who actually lived in Ukraine since the beginning of full-scale invasion. He's a great friend and a great patriot of Ukraine, if you could say that, even though he's an American himself. But Mark Voyager as well. There's obviously me, our dean Yuri Bots, who is also a professor in the United States, but he would come and spend significant time in Ukraine. So yes, there are faculty that are traveling and spending time and even living in Ukraine. But we also have a hybrid system where we allow some of the courses to be taught on Zoom online, and was designed by it was by design even before the full-scale invasion, because we understood that it will be challenging sometimes to bring some of the faculty on campus to Kyiv, even not in a time of war, and embracing the technologies and embracing the high quality videos that we can record and create a really cool content using obviously LMS and like Canvas and other systems to provide that high quality digital content to the students. So some faculty teach online.
Why is it important for Ukrainian students to take courses in English?
Well, we are integrating, we're becoming the part of the world. And so this is essential, right? I mean, before Ukraine had two languages, Ukrainian and Russian. And I think the step forward is to have a Ukrainian and English. English is the language of science. It is the language of business, international, foreign direct investment. When we're going to rebuild Ukraine, there will be teams from all over the world coming. They speak English, and it's important to have project managers who will be speaking fluent English, who will be integrated fully into the global world. And that's impossible without English, as simple as that.
We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with Roman and speak a little bit about his own personal connection to the war in Ukraine and his parents, his friends, what's going on from a personal standpoint. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about the university and the courses and the business courses that are taking on. And then I want to, given that this man is such a well-known and capable economist, I want to talk about the economy of Ukraine and what the chances are for rebuilding. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It's an honor for me to be chatting tonight with a gentleman that won an award of a budding genius in social science, as well as multiple grants. He's a economics professor at Case Management, the Weatherhood School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. He's got a PhD in economics, and he is the chair of Ukrainian American House, a founding rector of American University, Kyiv. Roman Sheremeta is his name. Did I get that right? Sheremeta?
Of course. Yeah, you did well.
Sheremeta, I apologize. So let's go personal for a couple of minutes. You said you were born in Ukraine and you were educated in the United States and you work now in the United States. Do you have family? Do you have parents in Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom and dad are still there. My brother and my sister-in-law are there, and I have a small family, so just one brother, but they're in Ukraine, and I have cousins. My aunt, my uncle, everybody is in Ukraine. Pretty much when I moved to the United States, I was the only one who moved. So yeah, my whole family is in Ukraine.
And are they in the east or in the west, or are they in Kiev? Have they been impacted? Has your family been impacted by the war, and how has it impacted you?
Yeah, so my parents are in the West. Most of my family is in the West, so they're in the safer part. But some of my family members are in the military, and so, for example, the husband of my cousin, he is actually in the aviation. He's serving the airplanes, and so in my city, Ivano-Frankivsk, would actually has a military airport. So they were the first one to be bombed, even though they're in the West. And so the first strikes that Russia made on Ukraine were actually also in my city, hometown. And so my brother recorded a video as he was on the balcony, and literally you could see the explosions happening in a distance. It was a scary, incredibly scary time. I was considering having my parents come to the U.S. but at the same time, I was also in Ukraine. So my parents decided to stay. My brother decided to stay. We decided to stay because it was the right thing to do. And my relatives, some of them went to the fight. My cousin was recently injured on the front line at the very heart of the battle that is happening right now in the Robotino on the counteroffensive, and he has just recently did an MRI scan. He has 150 shrapnel pieces in his body.
150.
Yeah, 150, and has about 24 fractures on his left side of the body. It's an incredible story how he survived. I mean, it was a miracle that he survived, because he had to crawl back to his positions over 1.5 kilometers because they didn't know that he was still alive. And so he had to crawl. He crawled to the positions. He screamed to his team, his soldiers, that help. And then he passed out. He passed out and he woke up already 300 something kilometers from the front line in the hospital. It's just, whatever human body does for survival is an incredible testament to how our body works. But so it's been tough. It's been tough because you're in the constant threat of something. The air raid sirens go on and off all the time. You become kind of immune to that. You don't know if you should go to the bomb shelter or not. And one point of time, I stopped going to the bomb shelters because it was so frequent. So it's like useless. Sometimes I went there was one story when I heard an explosion right next to it was an air defense system that was working, Patriot system actually. So it was really loud, and I literally had to run to the basement. Nobody had to ask me or tell me, "Hey, Roman, you should run," because it was right next to the window. It was quite crazy. So it's life continues for the family and friends, but at the same time, the war is real and it's there, and the threats are there, and so it's been a tough season. But as I said, it was also something that we felt is a pivotal moment in history. And if we turn our backs right now, I think I'll never forgive myself. I never forgive, that it's the same thing what happened during the Nazi invasion, in 1940s. And it's just, I want to be on the right side of the history with the family. I want to support them. I want to support Ukraine, and I want to make sure that we do everything possible to help them win and survive this war.
I appreciate that. I've spent a time in Kiev and Ukraine on business, and it's a beautiful country. It really was, in my experience, sort of half Russian speaking, half Ukrainian speaking.
Yeah.
When I was in Kiev, we would go to visit some banks, and they were Russian affiliated banks, and then other banks that were Western affiliated banks. And we would go to some restaurants that were very Russian speaking oriented, and others that were very Ukrainian. And it was almost like, in Canada, We have in Montreal, a French,
French speaking. Yeah.
reality and an English reality. And I've
Yeah.
sort of felt that it was like that. Obviously, it became very different. Tell me, why did this happen?
So, as you pointed out, Brian, correctly, it was the language was never an issue. I mean, Putin has used that as an issue to invade Ukraine, saying that, well, we're defending our Russian-speaking people, and these Russian-speaking people are the main ones that are actually fighting against Putin himself, because they are Ukrainians, so they just speak Russians, they speak Ukrainian, they speak two languages, they speak English like me. So why that happened? A very simple explanation. It's the imperialistic ambitions of Russia and a crazy leader that basically has shown that face several times before with Moldova, with Georgia, with Chechnya. It's a repeat of the history all over again. The imperialistic ambitions, nothing less, nothing more. The older narratives about denazification, which is just crazy, like that means killing me because I'm Ukrainian, therefore I'm a Nazi. Which is just Russians are acting exactly like Nazis, but we don't even care about that in terms of language, because everybody can see what they do. But or NATO expansion, all of these things is just, again, silly narratives that don't stand the test of the logic, because Ukrainians didn't want to join NATO. If you know the statistics in before 2014, the invasion of Crimea, less than 20% of Ukrainians wanted to join NATO. But then when Russia attacked Crimea and seized Crimea, that's when Ukrainians started to want to go to NATO. Now the result is about 90% of Ukrainians want to go to NATO after Russia full-scale invasion. So it's just silly to say that NATO caused this. It's that Russia caused this, and as a result, Ukraine wants to join NATO. As a result, Finland joined NATO, Sweden, and so these are all just propaganda narrative. The reality is very simple. We have imperialistic ambitions of a crazy man, a nation that has also got crazy, because I cannot explain how just a laid-back Russian can support genocide in the 21st century. It doesn't make sense.
I understand that something along the lines of 1 in 4 Ukrainians has blood relatives living in Russia, which is comparable to the relationship between Canada and the United States. 1 in 4 Canadians has a blood relative in the United States, so that there's a fair amount of cross-fertilization, if that's right, the right word, between the two countries. And yet people I've spoken to says that those family relationships have completely broken down because
that's right,
the Russian part of the families have bought into the propaganda. Is that true? And how?
That is true, Brian. That is exactly true. We have relatives or friends of the relatives, relatives of the relatives that live in Russia, and they've told us personally these stories. So it's my relatives that told these stories directly to me, that their uncle or their brother or somebody lives in Russia, and since the full-scale invasion, they completely broken apart in their relationship, because they're telling them, my relatives who live in Kiev, my uncle who lives in Kiev, is telling their relatives in Russia, hey, Russians are bombing us. And they're telling them, no, it's your own military that is bombing you. They're like, what do you mean? They've invaded and they are right here in our doorstep. My uncle took a gun. He actually, and he said he's going to defend his city from the Russian invasion. They're saying, no, that's all lies. Nothing happened in Bucha. He's like, I was in Bucha. I went there and I saw and I talked to people. They're like, no, that's all propaganda. It's Great Britain who did this. And it's just insane stupidity, insane just propaganda that has brainwashed people, and then it's been done for basically decades. It's not just a thing that just happened. That there's a system in place. The whole media is completely controlled by the state, and this is a really scary place. When the media is completely controlled by the state, is you get the constant narrative, and People have limited access to internet, Facebook, YouTube. These are terrorist organizations by the, the Russian propaganda, and so they've been blocked. And some people, of course, can pass the propaganda, and a lot of my friends, who I still consider friends from Russia, they obviously live in a different reality. They understand this propaganda, and most of them actually left Russia. So I have
think there's a lot of people that have left Russia.
Exactly. So yeah, so my friend Ilya, who was recently basically ran from Russia to Seattle, to the United States, and he left Russia, and the same week FSB came in knocking on his door. They were searching for him. They wanted to arrest him, so he just made it out in time.
Was he a dissident, or was he just someone that didn't believe the propaganda?
He was the Russian who didn't believe the propaganda. He understood the truth, and he was speaking about it.
So how do you think this all ends?
Well, this all ends. There is a short-term end, which is, the ceasefire, which probably will happen next year. Russia still has hopes that the support of the world will dwindle down, that Ukraine is not going to be able to withstand by itself, and so they hope that the elections in the United States will go in favor of sort of Russia, and so that's why they're still holding up for another year. But then there will be some agreement on the ceasefire where Ukraine will probably agree not to take back the territories by force, but they will say, hey, nobody will ever agree that these territories are Russian, and the world will not agree, UN will not agree, but there could be an agreement that these territories could be returned by the means of diplomacy in the future, but not by the forceful means of military. So that could be the case of temporary ceasefire, or a ceasefire in a permanent basis. And then Ukraine will go on its way to ascensions to the European Union, and hopefully to NATO as well, while these territories are going to be agreed to be returned only on a diplomatic basis in the future. Now, that's one option. But the real stop to the war will be when Russia sees to their imperialistic ambitions. And that can happen when Putin goes down with his regime. And Putin is not enough by himself, because there are a lot of crazy leaders in Russia that could be even worse than Putin. So we need to have this mentality change for the Russian people, this imperialistic mentality. And the only way to really do it is to have them significantly lose in this war, and show them that, hey, first of all, you guys are not empire anymore. Second of all, this is not acceptable in the world, and the punishment has to be significant for these sort of attempts.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit after the break, because you're an economist, and you should know better than anyone what the economic impact is on Russia and on Ukraine. So we're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes and talk about what this man's expertise is, other than Ukraine, which is economics. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Dr. Roman Sheremeta. He's a PhD, a chair of the Ukrainian American House, a founding rector of the American University in Kyiv, and he's a professor of economics at the Weatherhood School of Management at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. I've said this a few times, but I think it's pretty impressive that you won a 2018 Smith Ascending Scholar Prize for a, quote, budding genius in social science. Why did you win a budding genius award, sir?
Well, so I'm a behavioral economist. I study human behavior and related to economic activities, and it was very productive. Worked my butt off. I spent a lot of sleepless nights writing papers and doing research all over the world. I did research in Canada, out of all places, as well as, in the United States and Germany and Great Britain, China, Australia, you name it. And so, that brought a lot of attention, especially in the area of conflict and conflict resolution. that brought a lot of attention of other scholars who started citing my work and doing similar type of research, and that brought the recognition that was worthy enough of one of the top prizes in my field, and so that's how I got it.
Excellent. Have you written a book on behavioral economics?
Not yet, but I am planning to. I have 4 books that I'm planning to write. The one book that I did write was actually on the sort of the impact of Reformation, the Protestant Reformation on economy and on the Western Europe and the lessons for Ukraine. So this was sort of a behavioral approach. You know, people think sometimes with economy they always think about GDP, unemployment, inflation, profit, all these sort of terms, but they don't usually think about religion or social values. But those things are incredibly important from the behavioral perspective on the development of economics. And the point of that book, which I actually co-written with a Nobel laureate, Vernon Smith, and a couple other colleagues, was to show that these behavioral elements are incredibly important to the development of economy. And so Ukraine can take some lessons from that. So that's the book that I did write. But as I said, there are 4 in the pipeline that I need to write. Once the things become more normal, I will get to that.
What's the book called?
Reformation. The success of Europe and the lessons for Ukraine.
Really, that's fascinating. So you probably undoubtedly don't know this, but I just missed, I guess, having you as a professor. I took a year of doctoral courses at Case Western Reserve University in this Weatherhood School of Business, trying to do my DBA, and I'm a finance guy. Excuse me, and I got really captivated by social capital. And so I was doing a lot of things that were maybe sort of behavioral economics, but understanding social capital, and really got intrigued by a lot of that. So maybe I should pick up your book and see if I can fit it into my thesis. Anyway, let's turn to economics, which is your specialty. I want to talk about 2 topics. I want to talk about, the economy of Ukraine and how we can rebuild it. But let's leave that just for a second. Let's talk about the economic situation in Russia. You said that Russia's got to hurt, and they clearly have got to hurt, with deaths and defeat on the battlefield. But what about the defeat from an economic standpoint? We've had embargoes, we've had restrictions, we've had ousting them from different international financial systems. The economy has got to have been hurt a lot, no?
So the answer is yes, but somewhat. So the point here is that we have put a significant burden on Russia in terms of the economic sanctions. The biggest burden is that a lot of most of the Western companies, like Siemens. I mean, Siemens was in Russia since the time of Russian czars and famous Russian, famous Russian czars of Peter and others. The point is, it's been there for almost 200 years, and now it's gone permanently. And it's just one example. There's thousands of companies. If you want to see the whole list, there's a really good study by a group at Yale University. They actually track of all the companies that left Russia, and it's measured in thousands of the top companies. The foreign direct investment literally left Russia for good. And so saying that, the real result of that will be felt in the coming years. Not right away, but in the coming years.
Because of what? Because of lack of access to technology and new ideas and products, or what?
That's correct. All of that. So you get lack of access to the technology because, again, those companies are not, they're going to be moving forward. And even Russia catches up with some of the existing stuff. These companies are going to be moving pretty fast forward, and Russia is just not going to be able to catch up as fast. And so permanently, taking 10, 20 years ahead, this is a significant loss to Russia. They will kind of turn into North Korea type of economy, where they have some economy, but it's so obsolete. It's like a Terminator version 1 versus whatever the version came later on. And so then we have, on top of that, we also have the foreign direct investment literally is not coming to Russia. So nobody wants to invest into a country gone crazy. You know that's not a secure investment. Nobody wants to do it now. And then it's coming. You know, it's going to be cumulative, right? This is that the effect will be felt cumulatively over the coming years. So the Russian economy really fell in 2022, but it did pick up. It's going to pick up a little bit in 2023. They're actually going to have probably plus 2% GDP growth, which is a little bit better than what IMF was predicting. It was predicting around 1.5%. And the reason is, and that's the caveat, right? The reason is they were able to circumvent and the sanctions somewhat. So one example, you look today and there's these offshore companies that are doing business with the Western European companies, with the United States as well, and with Canada as well. And they appear on the books as they are, not Western companies, but they are. So, for example, the biggest in Kazakhstan, the level of imports from Germany has risen 5 times. And sorry, not 5 times, it's a 50 times, 5,000%. So it's a 50 times. And those imports, they go to Russia. I mean, they go from Germany to Kazakhstan, and from Germany to, Kyrgyzstan, or from Germany to other countries that are relatively still close to Russia, and then those products go to Russia.
So people are circumventing the sanctions, is what you're saying.
Exactly. And so that is putting sort of a challenge. And so if you follow these sanction packages from the European Union, the latest packages were really directed at stopping this circumvention of sanctions, stopping this sort of side deals that are happening. And another role is you have China, you have India that have really doubled their cooperation with Russia. And so that is also helping Russia a little bit. But again, these are the short-term solutions. The long-term, Russia is going to be suffering a lot. There's a really good studies coming from Yale School of Management. So they're the ones that really have been digging deeper, because one of the problems of analyzing Russian market is that it's still data comes from the Russian government. So the Russian government will make it look as if everything is wonderful, and you really need to do some fancy statistics and econometric techniques to really get at the heart of the matter and to figure out really what is happening in Russia, not taking their data at face value, because their data obviously is going to be favoring Russian economy and saying, oh, everything is great, everything is fine, we're doing wonderful. It's like with the exchange rate of the Russian ruble, which is they wanted to boast, well, look how strong Russian ruble is. Well, there is no market. They literally have been controlling the exchange rate, the Russian government, and they didn't put it in a free float market where you literally can exchange dollar for US ruble or Canadian dollar for US ruble. And so it's a propaganda, nothing more, nothing less.
But in addition to, the sanctions and what you've been talking about, they've spent a lot of money on the war.
Oh, absolutely.
Used up a lot of their military equipment. They've spent a lot of money on the war. They've lost, people say over 100,000 young men. And then, as you said with your friend that's in Seattle, there's rumors, at least reports of, I don't know how many, but tens of thousands of young men that have escaped Russia. So what's the impact of, number one, the money spent on the war, and number two, the manpower that is left Russia, either because they've died or they've left?
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. So again, as I said, I just scratched the surface of these negative consequences. A huge negative consequence that will be felt is, again, Russia is spending tons of money on war. Their budget has quadrupled at least, and so that comes at a deficit that hits pensions, that hits social payments, that hits the basic public services, and people are feeling that in Russia. They do feel that, and actually the support for war has significantly declined in Russia. And this is coming from the sort of independent polls, as independent as they can be in doing some research in Russia, that the support of war has declined significantly. So, for example, those people who were supporting, saying, hey, we should continue this war no matter what, there was more than 20%. Now, so these are the super enthusiasts. There are people that in general are support, but there's a on the scale from 0 to 5, like they 5, they really need to support. It was more than 20%. Now it's less than 12%. So it's cut in half of those enthusiasts, because Russia is not able to win the war. It's obvious. They're not able to achieve any single objective that they put at the beginning. So it's just a propaganda from Russia. Oh yeah, we did capture some territory from Ukraine, but that was never their goal. Their goal was to denazify, demilitarize Ukraine, to weaken them, to capture Kiev, and then none of that happened. So they really spending trillions on this, Russian rubles, and billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and they're not getting anywhere. And it comes at tremendous cost. In Ukraine, that is being somewhat covered by Canada, United States, European Union, friendly countries that are helping the country to survive. And so that deficit is being covered somewhat. And in Russia, that's not happening. It's on the opposite, right? They actually getting drainage of capital from Russia, and yet spending a lot. And people are leaving on a mass scale. The elite of Russia has left. We
heard rumors of that. Do you think it's true?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, it's just look at the numbers, and you see, especially the IT specialists, some of the most renowned professors that I know. I mean, they left Russia, and as I told you, and I know some Russian friends personally. Those that I consider to be the Russian elite, they left. Now, it's a limited sample, but it's the sample that I have from my personal experience. And it's really difficult to track some of these numbers, but because they leave Russia a lot of times illegally, for obvious reasons. They're not going to be going through the legal means, because they'll be just stopped on the borderline. And I mean, look in Finland, for example. Finland literally closed its borders right now to Russia because they have such an inflow of Russian dissidents and Russian immigrants and Russian people who are fleeing Russia. And Finland doesn't want to, even quote unquote good Russians, they don't want to have those good Russians in Finland, because they already had suffered so much, and they don't even want to have the Russian elite coming to Finland. And so absolutely, this is happening on a mass scale, and it will be felt for the decades to come.
We're going to take a break and come back and talk about Ukraine and the Ukrainian economy, and has it got a chance of coming back, and what does it take to have a resurgence of an economy in Ukraine, and can it happen while the war is still ongoing? Stay with us, everyone. We're back for some concluding comments in just 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to a Brian Crombie Radio Hour conversation with Dr. Roman Sheremeta, who is a chair of the Ukrainian American House. He's a founding rector of American University Kiev, and he's an economics professor at the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University. We've talked about your university in Kiev. We've talked about your family in Ukraine. We've talked about the impact of the war on you personally and your family members. We've talked a little bit about the impact of the war on Russia economically. We've talked about what you think might happen with a potential ceasefire. But you're an economics professor, so tell me. I've heard that the economy declined dramatically in Ukraine in the first year, but that actually has come back since then. And people are farming, and people are doing industrial activities, and they're running IT firms. Number one, how does that happen in the middle of a war? And number two, what do you think is going to happen with the economy in Ukraine? What does the West have to do? Do we need like a Marshall Plan like we did after World War II in Germany? You're the economics expert. If you were advising Biden or someone like that, what would you be telling them we need to do from an economic standpoint?
Yeah. So first of all, Ukrainian economy proved to be very resilient. The expectation for 2022 by IMF, World Bank, was that the economy will plunge almost 50%. So half of the economy is going to be gone. It did go down, but it went down by 29%. So much better relatively to what was expected. Now, in 2023, the economy come back 5% plus this year that we are right now in. And the forecast is very positive also for 2024. That has been proven to be the reason why Ukraine was able to withstand the war. And the West has played tremendous role in helping that to be the case, because a lot of burden that was on the social payments, the public schools, the hospitals, that was covered by the West, and that's been tremendous help to Ukraine. And so the idea is that the economy will recover in Ukraine within the next 10 years. So that will be a slow recovery because it's going to take time, but it's there. The bigger question is we need to put Ukrainian economy in a completely different trajectory to even show Russian people. And this is going to be the final victory. The final victory will be not even on the battlefield, but the final victory will be when we can show that a country that is striving for democratic values, that is partnering with the Western countries, is going to do much better than the one that is trying to stay in the Middle Ages, you know, and trying to kind of go back in history. So this is going to be incredibly important for Ukrainian recovery and for the future security of the world. What can the world do? The world can do by supporting Ukraine. We need a Marshall's Plan. There's quite a few plans that are available right now. I've been working with some teams myself on those plans. We need to consolidate them. The advice would be to have, first of all, a plan in place, as a long-term plan of how to invest in Ukrainian economy and help them to also to motivate the foreign direct investment. And in this part, we need to plan this not only with the government of US and Canada and European Union, but also with the Ukrainian government. This has to be a collaboration of what kind of conditions we need to create in Ukraine in order for the foreign direct investment to be able to come at the full scale. So that will be the driving force. It's not even going to be the Marshall Plan, but it will be a foreign direct investment, the companies, private capital that will come to Ukraine, realizing that potential for growth is enormous because the country is starting from such a low base that, you know, the return on investment is going to be much higher in Ukraine for the coming years than anywhere else in the world. And that's true. As an economist, I can attest to that. That's true. But we need to secure that capital. We need to have the rule of law. We need to have insurance for that capital, just because of some of the war risks and other things. But, you know, I personally have invested in Ukraine and continue to do that. And the world, I would encourage everybody to do that, to consider Ukraine as a potential ground for business. There are tremendous opportunities. Ukrainian people have incredible human capital. If you look at the top companies of the United States, Google, Microsoft, and other, you will find a Ukrainian trace in them. Some of the best IT professionals, they will have roots in Ukraine. A lot of unicorns have a Ukrainian blood in them. And so I encourage you to do that. We also need right now an immediate humanitarian help to Ukraine and military support. That is incredibly important. Advocacy on all levels, that needs to happen. You know, I became a chair of Ukrainian American House for the next 2 years. We have provided millions of dollars worth of direct humanitarian aid, where we actually delivered firsthand this aid to the final client, to the final person, to the frontline survivors. To you know, I've been to some of the worst places that have been shelled and destroyed in Ukraine, and we delivered that humanitarian aid that needs to be that needs to continue. So if you guys can partner with us at Ukrainian American House, it's uahouse.org. And then advocacy. If you can just advocate, voice, vote for, or nudge your congressmen, your representatives to help Ukraine to vote on the bills that would actually be in support of Ukraine. All of this counts. Every bit of help counts. And I thank everyone who comes together in this time of history to help Ukraine.
Roman, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic by life, and I'm especially optimistic about Ukraine.
Dr. Roman Sheremeta, chair of the Ukrainian American House, founding rector of American University Kyiv, and a professor of economics at Case Western Reserve University Weatherhood School of Management. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing so much with us about your journey in Kyiv, your family, what you think is going to happen in Ukraine, and also your comments about the economies, both in Russia and Ukraine. I really appreciate it. It's been very educational.
Thank you, Brian.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'll remind you I'm on at 6 p.m. every Monday through Friday at 9:60 a.m. in Toronto, or you can reach me online anywhere, even from Cleveland or Kyiv, at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts and videocasts are available on my website, briancrombie.com. Good night, everybody. I'm optimistic too.